Sorry about this.
We're quite patient.
I just edited 100 pages today. This isn't patience. I've just got nothing left.
Oh, I am.
Final edit.
Nice.
Congratulations.
It tells me I'm
It's
using an
NaNoWriMo.
Live.
Okay, we are live. We are recording. Welcome to night 3 of Mystery Week, an annual celebration of crime writing from the NorCal chapter of Mystery Writers of America, which has been empowering mystery writers and encouraging mystery readers since 1945. I am Lori King. I am NorCal's current president for my sins, and I encourage you to join us both in our many events that are available to the public and in becoming a member. Take a look at our website, which is mwanorcal.org, and you can find a list of upcoming events and member benefits. And you can watch our Facebook page for a series of live talks and panels. Tonight's panel on writing things and research, and our moderator is Lori Sheehan. Take it away, Lori.
Thank you very much. I welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm going to do a quick introduction for our panelists, and then we'll move right into questions. So I would like to begin with John Billheimer. John is a native of West Virginia. He lives in the Portola Valley in California and holds an engineering PhD from Stanford. He's the author of the funny and sometimes touching, quite touching, Owen Allison Mysteries. They are set in the Appalachia coal fields. The most recent book in the series is Primary Target, which deals with coal country election shenanigans. Election shenanigans, who knew? A second series features Lloyd Keaton, a Midwest sports writer, they're quite fun, with a gambling habit. A nonfiction book of his, Hitchcock and the Censors, documents Alfred Hitchcock's battles with blue noses and won an Edgar Award in 2020. So congratulations, John. Katrina McPherson was born in Scotland and lived there until immigrating to the United States in 2010. She writes the multi-award winning Dandy Gilver series set in the old country in the 1930s, as well as a strand of multi-award winning psychological thrillers. Very different awards for those. After 8 years in the new country, she kicked off the humorous Last Ditch series, which takes a wry look at California life. These are not multi-award winning books, she says, but the first two did win the same award in consecutive years, which still doesn't suck, I think. Katrina is a proud lifetime member and former national president of Sisters in Crime. Thanks for joining us tonight. Michael Nava is here too. He is the author of the acclaimed series of 8 novels featuring gay Latino criminal defense lawyer Henry Rios. The New Yorker called Henry a detective unlike any previous protagonist in American noir, which is quite nice. The New York Times Book Review has called Nava one of our best writers. In 2020, his latest Rios novel, Carved in Bone, was awarded his 7th Lambda Literary Award in the gay mystery category. He has also been honored with the Bill Whitehead Award for Lifetime Achievement in LGBT literature. His next Rios novel, Lies with Man, will be published in April by Amble Press. Thanks for joining us tonight. And last but certainly not least is Gigi Pandian. She is the USA Today bestselling mystery author, breast cancer survivor, and accidental almost vegan. She's the child of anthropologists from New Mexico and the southern tip of India, and she spent her childhood traveling around the world on their research trips, which had to be fabulous, and now lives outside San Francisco with her husband and a gargoyle who does watch over her backyard vegetable garden, I've heard. Gigi writes lighthearted traditional mysteries, including the Accidental Alchemist mysteries and the Jaya Jones Treasure Hunt mysteries. She loves locked room mystery stories. Her debut novel won the Malice Domestic Grant, and she's been awarded the Agatha Lefty Derringer. And as of earlier this month, the Anthony. Congratulations. And as with all of our panels this week, the 4 talented and gracious people that you see before you are members of Mystery Writers of America, and we're proud to have them in our chapter, which is NorCal. So thank you all for joining us here tonight. And I am going to kick it off by asking the first question, which I know the answer to, but I would like you to expound upon this. So when you are picking a location and settings, do you prefer fictional places or do you prefer real settings for your novels? So John, actually, I know the answer to that. Why don't you go ahead and kick us off by telling us a little bit about your locations?
My location, I have two series. One, the West Virginia series is set in a small town called Barkley, which is really Beckley, which is a small town of about 15,000 people. But I couldn't call it Beckley because there's some unwritten rule. If a city is small enough, evidently, and in fact, I think this is probably true. If a city is small enough, everybody knows everybody else. So if you call the mayor a nincompoop, the readers think you're calling the real mayor a nincompoop. And that's not particularly good because he may or may not be a nincompoop, but in any case, there'll be a new mayor by the time your book comes out. So Barkley is really Beckley. But I thought in my second series, I wanted to set it in Columbus, Ohio, which is a city of about 1 million. So I thought, I've got no problem. I'll just call it Columbus. But the publishers didn't want me to call it Columbus. So I had to change the name of Columbus. And I wanted a kind of a mid-state name of some sort. So I looked at Middleburg and Centerville, and all those were already taken. So I finally called it Mecklenburg, I'm sorry. And I needed a baseball team there, so it's the Mecklenburg Mammoths. So I don't know whether there really is a rule about how large a city has to be, but I figure Raymond Chandler had to call Santa Monica Bay City, and Ross McDonald had to call I guess it was Santa Barbara was Santa Teresa. So I figure I'm in good company. I just don't know the rules.
Right. I wasn't actually sure there were rules, but Katrina, so I know your settings are kind to you in a way because you obviously have been to Scotland, right?
Yeah, just about, 44 years. So that series, I mean, I do the same as Bill does. Sorry, I haven't got my glasses on. John does. John Billheimer, sorry, because the only way to save my hairdo is to put my glasses on my head. So I do that, like use a real place but change the name. Sometimes the historical ones, I think everybody's dead. So I just use a real place, like a real castle, a real village, a real street, a real house. And some of the modern ones, I set them in real places. The California ones are absolutely set in Davis, California, but I've so cleverly changed the name to Cuento, which is Spanish for fiction. Haha, right?
Uh-huh.
But it's absolutely Davis, California, except I just took half of it away, so it's easier to deal with. So when you go for people who know Davis, California, when you go under the railroad tracks, there's a whole fancy schmancy bit of Davis, and I just said that's not there. It's just tomato fields and the Last Ditch Motel, named after the Last Ditch Slough. But I have a lot of fun with that because I do change some things. So on my website, I've got a little quiz that if you know Davis, then you'll be able to tell why is the newspaper called this in the book, why is the coffee shop called this in the book. There are little kind of Easter eggs there, and that's fun. Which do I prefer? That's not really what you asked. I prefer to use a real place. I prefer the kind of strictures of having to make it work in a real place, but I'm interested to know what the other people do.
Yeah. Gigi, do you want to go next? And I love your settings.
Yeah, so this is a difficult question for me this year because I'm in a transition period right now from what I've always done before to what I'm doing in this new book. What I have always loved to do is pick real places and then go find all of the interesting hidden gems that people don't know about in the history of a place or something really, like in big town, like. So Jaya's in San Francisco and the Accidental Alchemist series is in Portland. And then the Jaya books also will take off and go to a different foreign destination that's a real place that I've spent time at. But the fun of those ones I've always found in exploring the settings of a place is I'm so inspired by going to the real places and figuring out what the real interesting gems are that you never would know if you hadn't been there. And that's even not on the research trips I've done as an adult, but even things when I was a kid and traveling around with my parents and forced to be places that I, totally took for granted while I was little, that I, freezing cold, have to be here with this castle over here while my mom goes and does some research. So what am I going to do with myself? I have to explore this castle and make up a story about its history and, take some, buy some little book of the ghost stories of this castle. So those things that I came to appreciate as I got older and older, I really love to do that as a jumping off point. And I always write an author's note in the back of my book that says what's real and what's fictional. And until this year, it has been 95% real. And then I, just jumping off part for what is actually fictional in there. But this year I actually did make up my own small town now. That is nestled in. And so much like Katrina's town that is not Davis, I have this small town nestled into the East Bay Hills right along the hillside. So it's kind of like North Berkeley, but not. And so I needed the freedom with this small little community nestled into the hillside with some of the settings that I just didn't want to get into. And also like what John was saying, like I didn't want to get into people thinking it was a certain thing. And so I just like made, a couple of miles parted in the hillside to make an additional small town here, but everything around it is still real and they'll still go to places in San Francisco and other places. But I get total freedom. And so it's gone to my head. I have all these drawings and things that I now want to put in the book to have my little town.
You're the mayor.
Yep, I get to make it all up.
That's right. So Michael, how about you and your settings for your books?
So the Rios books are set in Los Angeles and San Francisco. That's important because the atmosphere of the cities is part of the character of the books, and how you choose to portray a city feeds the narrative of the book. But the details of, for example, where the character lives or characters live, those are fictionalized, because if I'm accurate, if I use real places, real streets where Rios lives, for example, if I identify that as real street, some reader is bound to write me a note saying, oh, you said that house was pink. In fact, it's painted blue. So, so where I need to fudge details or where I don't remember, I just make it up. But generally, I use the actual locations of cities as part of the atmosphere and character of the.
Yeah, well, that's a great lead in. I'll ask you to keep going just for a minute and follow that with, given our current circumstance of not really being able to get out and go places much, I'll ask each of you. Michael can begin since you sort of led into it. What are you doing now for research? Are you using, Google Maps or old photos or notes that you've taken in the past?
So Lies with Men is set in Los Angeles in 1986 and refers to a number of locations that are no longer there. So I have been looking at Google and at old maps to try to remind myself of what things looked like, because LA is a very different city now than it was in the mid 80s. And I do some reading, and when I don't know, I just make it up.
Well, you're a fiction writer, so that's perfect. Katrina, how are you doing your research now? Has it changed much?
I've been quite lucky that what I've been writing since we were locked down was set about 50 miles from where I was born. So the book that I've written this year, I know that area so well, and I've done that thing that you were talking about, Gigi, that you're where Berkeley is, but it's not Berkeley. So it's obvious which town this is. I've changed its name. But I mention every other town in the valley, and I don't mention this one town, so it's obvious what it was. So I've been quite lucky. But yeah, I really and the next one, this last ditch one's going to be okay, but after that, like the next thing that I do, I think it's going to pinch, because I usually do like to go there and walk around and make lots of notes and spend some time there. So I'm not sure how that's going to work out. Maybe I'll do a locked room or something, so I don't need a setting, like a real room or just
Like
a
a real-
house.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh no, I've got one setting up my sleeve actually, from last summer. I did a lot of tramping about and researching the setting, and I haven't used it yet, so maybe I'll use that.
Oh, good. Yep, something.
I did come a cropper. I was just going to say I came a cropper with that author's note thing once that I did. I was using a bit of Scotland, and I needed. There was no castle, can you believe it? So I took a castle from a different bit of Scotland and dragged it about 100 miles north and plopped it down in my setting and said at the end, this is a real castle, Casillas Castle, but it's down in Dumfries and Galloway. And I did a library event, and a woman came in really hot and cross and kind of muddy and with bits of vegetation sticking to her, and she'd be looking for the castle, and she was only halfway through the book, so she hadn't got to the author's note. It was really hard not to laugh, because she was so disheveled and angry. So I had to really work hard to apologize and not just giggle. So it went wrong.
Oh,
Sorry, that's not what you asked, Laurie, but it's just I remembered that when Gigi said that.
I love these stories. I do. I love them. So, John, I know that your first books are set in your hometown, right? Or near your hometown?
Right. My hometown is Huntington, West Virginia, and when my mom still lived there, I would go back and actually research things. And now I have a brother who lives there, so I can pick up a phone and ask him about certain things. And I guess with the lockdown, I haven't been back in a long time, but I found, in addition to the internet, I've found the county employees to be wonderfully helpful. I needed to know how many abandoned coal mines there were in a certain area, for instance, and I just found a particular county office and emailed them, and they came back with a whole list of every county in the state, how many abandoned coal mines, how many working coal mines, what the names were. So I've been actually doing better research as a result of finding new sources. So.
Oh, good. Gigi, how about you? You want to?
Well, first, I'm incredibly disappointed. I had 2 research trips planned this year, and they weren't purely research trips, but I always, combine them when I have a research trip. I'll combine it with some fun, or vice versa. I was going to go to Bloody Scotland this year, actually, for the first time. The mystery convention, I had it all planned with a girlfriend, and we were going to do that, but life had other plans this year. So yeah, so I have had to. I have indulged my book addiction problem. I don't have nearly enough bookshelves, even like all these bookshelves, you can see a little bit of them up here. This was all built in, that my husband built it. After we, ran out of space in the other bookshelves, he like built this into the wall above the fireplace here, and it's still immediately all the books just like, and it was all full, and now there's just stacks of them everywhere. So I've had to buy even more books this year, because I do, like John, I love talking to people, and people are so generous with their time and have so much great information. So it's wonderful to reach out to people to get information if we can't travel. But I find my first step has to be to read books or watch videos or things that will inspire me, because otherwise I don't know what questions to ask. And so I really need to figure out where my creativity is going to go and where that inspiring idea comes from. So things like I grabbed a couple new research books off my shelf. So I have my travels through South Indian kitchens, because India right now, and I haven't been to Portland lately. So I got my little Portlandness cultural atlas. And one thing too that I love reminding myself when I travel, one thing I like to buy is just random like magazines, because it's not like it's a book that has something, but just like remembering things from, and from somewhere that are just like the cultural moment, and things that all of the little details that we love when we read a book that wouldn't actually be something that someone would talk about in a place if they're writing about the place, but just exist as normally in life that you would find, you know, so picking up all those random little things. And so, yeah, so I love, I'm kind of a pack rat with things like that I've saved. So it's really unfortunate that I live in a small house in the Bay Area. So yeah, that's there's more books stacked up than free space walking around these little hardwood floors these days.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if most of us and everyone else watching tonight could probably say the same. I love the fact that Vogue has a sorry issue. I think that's fabulous.
Yeah, no, because it's Vogue India. So yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I know you've touched a little bit on this next question already tonight, but I'm going to dig a little bit deeper and ask you to dish for a minute on people or things in your life, past or present, that you've pulled out and put into your book. So, I mean, we talked a little bit about places that you're from, find their way into your books, but what about personal experiences, jobs you've held? I mean, not just, I know Michael, obviously being a lawyer helps you write a lawyer, but what else is, you know, what else can you pull from in your own past? And actually, if you do pull something from your own past that you find that was personal to you, how do you add research to that if it's already unique to you? Do you find that that's difficult? So Michael, do you want to go ahead and start with that one?
Well, so I have a friend at UCLA, Alicia de Oliva, who teaches a course called Mysteries with a Mission, which is in which she teaches crime fiction that addresses some sort of social issue and uses the narrative, wraps it in it. So my books are like that. And It Lies with Men, for example, it's set in LA in 1986, and one of the things in the background is a ballot initiative that would have allowed health officials to quarantine people with AIDS. And this was an actual ballot initiative that was on the ballot in 1986. And as you can imagine, it was kind of a precursor to what we're seeing now politically. It was a very polarizing issue. So that's an actual event, and I was in Los Angeles in 1986, and I was involved in that campaign. So, you know, I'm using that experience as the core of this book, but I can't, it was a long time ago. I have very dim memories of it. So I've had to do a tremendous amount of research to remind myself not only what the law would have done, but what the campaign was and what people were saying at the time. You know, in the last book, Carved in Bone, set in San Francisco in 1984, at the very outset of the AIDS epidemic. And, you know, I did a good solid 6 months of research about what it was in the early 80s for the gay community of San Francisco when AIDS hit.
Yeah. Yeah, that's sorry, I lost my my train of thought there for a minute. I had to make a note about Mysteries with a Mission, because as the MWA NorCal event chair, I'm thinking, ooh, this might be a really good panel. Somebody might be able to come and talk to our group. So
I volunteer.
Okay, good.
I'm writing an article about that. So.
Oh, good. That would be great. So Katrina, how about you? Actually, when I wrote this question, I thought of a fake story that you told about mucking out horse stalls or something that it was a job that you didn't really have. And anyway, are there any
mucking
jobs?
out horse stalls? No, I've never done that.
It was a lawyer's panel.
Oh, right. Okay. I thought, what are you talking about? Yeah, I didn't. I was thinking about it, and apart from specific people that I've put in books, once a real person, I put my godmother, who's gone on ahead now, but I had a book set in 1923, and she was 6 weeks old on the day that this book opened, and I had her winning the Bonnie Baby competition at the local fair. So that was her name, you know, just thought that's a nice little thing to do. And I did use my late and much loved grandmother-in-law, Neil's granny, Neil Stepgranny actually, as the basis of a character. Absolutely, her look, her personality. But I don't think I've used experiences that I've had. I've done lots of what I think, I've written lots of jobs that I think sound like great fun, but they're not jobs that I've ever done. So like someone who runs a free clothing service for a Catholic charity. I think that'd be great fun, just like grubbing around, getting clothes, making outfits, making them look nice, you know, putting things on eBay to get money to buy new underwear. I think that sounds like fun. And also someone who's a picker in a supermarket who does other people's shopping for them. Because I thought, what a great premise. If you're really nosy and you find out that you're doing all your neighbours' grocery shopping, you find out such a lot about people, right?
Oh, you do?
So I always thought these were quite fun and aspirational jobs. And then, you know, someone said in a review, these grim lives of despair. And I thought, rude. You know, the only jobs I've ever, I worked in a library, and I do tend to have characters go to libraries a lot to find stuff out, because once you've worked in a library and you know everything's there, why would you not? This is in the 30s, not now, when we just Google it. Yeah.
Right.
You do spend a lot of time in libraries. Dandy and Alec do. Yeah, they do.
Good. So that, you know, that's the fun part, though, being able to create these really fun things. We always say, right, we create all these wonderful characters and these really fun experiences. We do horrible things to them, to these really nice people in the books. So John, I know your engineering degree plays a part in your first series, right?
Yes and no. I was trying to think of the answers to this. I grew up in West Virginia, but I had never been down in a coal mine until I came out here. The first job I had was with Stanford Research Institute. First thing they did was send me back to West Virginia to try and figure out how to get coal from the mine to the market more cheaply. And this is 55, 56, maybe even 60 years ago. That it was one of my first jobs, and I was really impressed with the coal miners. There were independent coal miners then. I mean, there were the same big coal companies that are going out of business now, but there were independent coal miners who would just go into their backyard and hack and hew into a hill and bring out coal, and the coal companies treated them the same as anybody else. They would send a coal car to their home, and then they get it loaded up and then put it over a tipple and send it to market. And I was just really impressed with the resourcefulness of these coal miners who no longer exist, but they found their way into my first book, which was called Contrary Blues, and is about a small coal country town that's about to go under. They figured out how to get a subsidy from federal government by telling the government they're running a 20 bus system when they're really only running 2, and somebody's pocketing $500,000 a year. So there's that aspect of it. But see, I spent my working years as a independent researcher doing mostly traffic planning and traffic consulting. And the Highway Patrol, which is a really neat organization, Highway Patrol in California, was a big client. We did a lot of drunk driving work and work trying to figure out how to optimize their enforcement. And that's coming in handy right now, because my hero, the book I'm writing right now, he's running for, he's going to run for sheriff. He doesn't have any sheriff background at all. And so I'm sort of transplanting some of the work I had done with the Highway Patrol to give him that same kind of a background. Well, yeah, I haven't been a sheriff, but I've worked with these cops in this capacity. And so it gives you, just that work gives you a lot of stories to tell. I know I'd always ask cops, well, when we were doing drunk driving work, well, what's the dumbest excuse you ever got from a drunk driver? And this one cop told me about a guy he'd pulled over that was obviously drunk, and he was chewing gum. And the cop asked for his ID, and the guy had rolled up the tinfoil from the gum wrapper in a tight little ball. And he hands it to the cop and he says, "Perhaps this silver bullet will let you know who I am." Now,
Oh,
I can see the blank. I can see the blank look on anybody who's under 50. Oh, anybody who's under 50. That doesn't ring a bell, I guess. That was the way the Lone Ranger would introduce himself in the radio stories I grew up with. He couldn't give away his ID, but he would say, "Perhaps this silver bullet will let you know who I am." In fact, the blank looks tell me that I probably shouldn't use that story in my book.
people would
Nope.
think he was a vampire. That's what I would think. Because if they
That's
think
right.
he's
Werewolf.
the vampire.
Yeah, I got my anecdotes are out of date.
No, I love them though. I think that's perfect. And I think there's a place for making people think. You feed them something, you give them just a little bit more, make them go look it up. So Gigi, I actually thought about you when I wrote this question as well, because I wondered if any of the people that you met there worked with your parents find their way into your books when you were traveling around with them when you were young.
There's no one that I particularly, there are never characters that I base specifically on one person. But I mean, obviously, people who made an impression will have some little trait or something that will pop up in a given character. But much more than those childhood travels that really impacted the way that I wanted to tell stories was, since my parents are academics, I always just assumed that would be my life. It was, just seemed like my predestined path. But when I really started doing it myself, and when I was in a PhD program, I loved that I learned how to do research at that level. And that's one of the things that I love to do research, but everything else having to do with academia, I mean, it was sucking the life out of me. It turned out not being for me at all. Yes. And Katrina, yes, I feel you. And so I'm a PhD dropout, but I love so much about it, but I love the fictional, so either me as a little child seeing, like the pieces that you get to do certain cool things, but really as a whole, it was not for me at all. And so when I dropped out of my PhD program with my master's, and I just packed up everything I owned into my little Volkswagen Golf and drove down the West Coast, moved in with a friend in Berkeley, and had nothing figured out except for I needed to do something more creative in my life. And so I started doing several things, but one of them was writing a novel about an academic who I decided to give her all of the fictional adventures that I could not have in real life, but that I wanted academia to be. So that's where Jaya Jones came from, because she's a history professor, but she gets to have all of these amazing adventures. And all of the things that she finds are the things that I wish I had found in research. Like when I would research and find something really cool, I would want to make up that cool story that went with it. But instead it would just have this ending that fizzled out because that was real life. But I wanted to have that nicely resolved, happy packaged ending. And so by doing it fictionally, I can give myself and other people that I couldn't get in my real life. And so I love that there are people who want to do this in their lives, like my parents and so many others, but it was not for me.
Yeah,
That's just reminded me, can I just say this really quickly, Laurie? That's reminded me of my failure to use something in my real life, because I did finish my PhD and I was what you would call a professor for 5 years in linguistics. And I thought, no, there must be, how can I use it? How can I use it? How can I use it? Forensic linguist, blah, blah, blah. Never worked it out. And then a pair of writers called Meg Mims and Sharon Pisacreta, writing as D.E. Ireland, said, would you blurb our new book, Henry Higgins and Eliza Doolittle Investigate? The most famous fictional linguist set in my home country, well, London, in the past, that I write about. And I remember thinking, oof, why did I not think of that? I could have done that, but they did it better than I could have anyway. So, yeah.
That now I'm going to have to look that one up too.
Mm.
So that Gigi, your response to the last question sort of leads me to wonder if you could each just offer a little something. So we readers go into your books for a matter of, hours or days, but you guys live in these places that you create, for the series, you live in them for years. So Gigi touched on a little bit that you send Jaya on these wonderful adventures, but how do you, Gigi, and how do the rest of you create a place that keeps you really entertained as well, and continuing to want to go to that place as much as your readers want to go to that place? So Gigi, you want to just...
Sure. I mean, I just follow all of the random rabbit holes that I happen to fall down. And so I like to not overly plan or overly schedule myself when I'm traveling or when I'm writing. I like to just see where it goes and really follow the most, just all of the random paths and the things that that keep me excited and keep me interested. And that's the only way that I think that readers will be interested too. And I used to think of myself as an outliner because I do write really complicated puzzle plots. And so I need to have some sort of structure. But regardless of that, I've realized my outline is my security blanket. And so I need it to get writing, but then I have to follow all of those random paths as soon as I go down them, because that's the thing that keeps it exciting and interesting to me. And that's the way that it'll stay interesting to readers too.
Nice. And Michael, how about you? LA and San Francisco are fun places to be, but what do you do to keep those places exciting for you?
Well, I mean, to follow up on my last response about Mysteries with a Mission, I guess I'm a little unusual in that I write mysteries, and I think they're pretty, my first obligation as a writer is to entertain the reader in the broadest sense, which is just to create a book where the reader wants to keep turning the pages to find out what happens. But I use mysteries to write about issues of social justice and things that piss me off in the world. And there's never a shortage of those. I'm a gay man and also a Mexican American grandson of Mexican immigrants. So there's lots to say about those two experiences, and it's just the matter of finding the hook, and the hooks present themselves. I mean, I was just reading a piece of the LA Times about these guys who'd been held in detention by ICE, the immigration agency, who've been raped they've been raped while they've been detained, and the police refused to respond to the calls or do anything about it. So that's already working in my mind. And but I don't write polemics, I don't write sociology, I write novels. So the challenge for me is to take the germ of that story, and to construct a narrative around it that people want to read, that will entertain them.
Yeah, and that's perfect to be able to bring people a little bit of knowledge and teach them something without really letting them know that you're teaching them something.
Well, I would say that mystery writers are generally, in my opinion, sophisticated and educated readers, and they like to go places they haven't been before, whether it's a geographical place or a psychological place. And if you tell them a good story, you can slip in a lot.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. And which feeds nicely to Bill. I love your locations, and they are not the normal locations that we see often in mystery novels. So I know you picked one place that was near your hometown, and you talked a bit about why you chose the location for the baseball stories, but how do you really open up those places that people don't normally see and make them exciting?
Yeah, I guess I didn't think about that. I was listening to the others. I noticed that in all of my West Virginia books, at least, there's some physical aspect that winds up interesting me. There's a flood, or there's an underground mine, or there's somebody caught in a mine, or there's a bridge that's poorly constructed that collapses. There's a a hue and cry over that bridge, for instance. And there's, I guess there's, in one case, in fact, I'm working on it again now. I invented a museum of fakes and frauds that is in one of the books. And so you've got to worry about, are these fakes or are they frauds or are they real? And somebody is bilking somebody. So, but a good many of the West Virginia books have stemmed from something that actually happened, like a flood or a mine accident. And those have been really interesting for me. I guess the other aspect, I think there's one aspect that I've never really mined very well, and that's the friendly bar that everybody goes to, or the luncheonette. I do have, I have a writing group, and I know that the scenes that seem to interest them and get them involved are my hero in West Virginia, Owen Allison, lives at home with a mother who has Alzheimer's and a live-in nurse, and they seem to like the intimacy of those scenes more than the outer doors, the why this bridge collapsed kind of thing. So.
Right. And Katrina, how about you?
Yeah, I've been thinking about it, listening to the others speaking, and I think I send so in the 1930s detective series, I'm writing, I've just finished book number 15, so there's 14 of them out. And what I've done is center different places, like Gigi, she goes to, she gets a letter or whatever, she's a private detective and she goes to where the case is. So geographically different places, and then increasingly kind of different kinds of institutions. So she's been in a pair of rival department stores, and she was undercover as a servant in a grand house, but during the miners' strike of 1926, she was also in a mining village. She's been at a circus, and that's when I really thought, the sort of, who's going to stop me? Like, I can do this. They had circuses in the 30s. I want to send her to the circus. She's been in a private hydropathic hospital. She's a bonkers place. We've got water coming out of the ground and we've got electricity. Let's put them together. What could go wrong? So, and I think I made her posh, this detective, because I thought she'd have the freedom, she'd have the leisure, she'd have a car, she'd have the freedom to go around. And then because I'm so incredibly not posh myself, she always ends up below stairs. She always ends up in the little grocer's shop, or, with the people like I would be if I'd been alive then. I wouldn't be having a butler. I would have been scrubbing the floor. So she always finds the kind of very ordinary bit of wherever she goes, but that's how I keep that fresh. The California series, I don't know. I'm just about to start book 4 in NaNoWriMo. I've never written a series with 4 books all set in the same place.
Yeah, so that
maybe I can't.
No, you can. You can. Of course you can. So a few of you have mentioned places. Bill mentioned the house where Owen Allison lives with his mother. I think Michael mentioned a cafe or something in one of your responses. So do you think that those places, like The Last Ditch for you, Katrina, they become, Michael, that's what you said. You said a place becomes a character. The setting is actually another character in the book. So Katrina, do you want to start, and we'll just wave backwards from here?
Well, yeah, I hope so. The idea for having it was before Schitt's Creek, by the way. I'll just put that out there. I love Schitt's Creek. It's such a happy place to spend time. But my idea about a motel was that I would have my protagonist live in the motel because she can't afford to live anywhere else. And then there would be transients. So there would be new people in every book, and that's how I would have the plots. But then I fell in love with them all in book 1, and I changed it so that they all live there permanently. So nobody changes. It's just this little band of 9 people who all live in the motel together. And I love The Last Ditch, but I am genuinely a little bit worried that I'm going to make the same jokes, or that there's nothing more to say about this setting. So I'm a little bit anxious. I think character is how to do it. I don't know. Someone tell me, how do you write about a same small place, like it's a motel with 20 rooms.
Do you guys have comments to give back to Katrina? You want to share something from your, is there Michael, is there a place in your books where your characters go again and again, a cafe or a?
Well, I mean, Rios is frequently in his house. And, I think that all settings need to serve the narrative in some sense, by casting light on the character or some aspect of the story. So I often describe his house because it says something about who he is. He's a workaholic, so his kitchen is unused. There's like dust on the tabletops. He can't be bothered with sort of the ordinary minutia of life because he's so passionate about the cases and the clients he has. So I mean, I use his house as sort of a way to shade and texture his character.
Yeah.
Katrina, if you've written 15
I think I'm going to be okay. Thank you. I think
you'll
I'm going to be
fine.
okay. Because the motel, just when you said that, thank you so much, because the motel is, you see it through the eyes of the shambolic manager of the motel and the really quite obsessively germophobic manager of the attached laundromat. So yeah, I suppose the motel is an extension of their character. Thank you, Michael.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
And John, just really quickly, the house where Owen lives with his mom is a great place. I mean, it's welcoming. So how do you like going there yourself when you write those characters?
Well, the house that Owen lives in with his mom is the house that I grew up in, and I do like going there. It reminds me of my mom. And the characters there, the live-in nurse. My mom didn't have Alzheimer's. She was right up to the 96th year when she died. But she did have, West Virginia has horrible doctors, and both my dad and mom were misdiagnosed for a long time. My mom lost her right arm because nobody had caught a cancer in time. And she taught herself to paint left-handed. And so we have, I guess I don't see any up now, but we all, my brothers and sisters have examples of her late life paintings that she did left-handed. I don't know why I'm off on that. The point I wanted to make is that the nurse in my story is actually the nurse that wound up taking care of my mom during her later years. And she was amazing. She was a tall, beautiful woman, but she was educated in backwoods West Virginia, and her grammar was just terrible, but just unbelievable. You'd see her and then you'd hear these words come out that you just placed her, and I wouldn't change her, I never try and correct her. But so that's the basis of the character in my book, who also doesn't use, or talks like a real hillbilly, if I can use that word. Actually, hillbilly is the only. We hillbillies are sort of the last refuge of people that you can insult without getting the PC crowd down on you. So
is hillbilly an insult, John?
Oh yeah, sure.
Is it? Right. Okay. I'm new here. Maybe everybody else knows that, but I'm never very sure whether it is. So you can say I'm a hillbilly, but no one can say you're a hillbilly, right?
That's right. That's right. I guess I don't pay much attention to it. In fact, I respond by translating jokes. If I hear a blonde joke, I know I can't retell that. But if I make the blonde a hillbilly, I can tell that joke because I'm a hillbilly. That's so
where you come from. It's a good point too that you made, Bill, that you love people for who they are. You don't judge them. That their character is often bigger than what you see when you first meet them. So that's great.
A marvelous nurse.
Yeah. So Gigi, I took you a bit into Jaya, but if we're talking about places where people love to go, I have to tell you that I fell in love with Zoe's house when I first read The Accidental Alchemist. I just loved all the spaces and nooks and crannies. So is that one place that you like going back to when you when
It
you write?
is. It is. I love architectural details and things. So I also love the cafe in the Accidental Alchemist series with the living tree growing in the middle of it. And so I love cozy spaces. And so I love to always have at least, even if they're off on an adventure in the middle of any book, that there's at least bookended with the nice cozy spaces where you can, go have, with the circle of friends and, in this nice cozy space. That I always love to create that, because I always love to visit that when I read books myself, like when you're going to catch up with old friends, when you're reading a series, that I love those spaces that just can immediately transport you there.
Yeah, and they're good for the readers. We like to go back to those places. You're all doing great, by the way, with that. So I'm going to keep us trotting along with our questions. This one should be relatively easy. Writers being readers as well. What are some of your favorite places in other mysteries? So what do you find particularly evocative or enchanting about some of your favorite places that other writers write? You want to, let's start at the top again. Katrina, you want to?
Yeah, I just turned the last page yesterday on Rules for Being Dead. Has anyone else read that? Kim Powers' Rules for Being Dead, set in 1966 in McKinney, Texas. A little boy who goes to the movies, goes to the Ritz, and goes to the drive-in all the time. And I've been to Texas. I've never been to Texas in the 60s, but it was just, I mean, and it's a standalone, and I was so sorry that it was a standalone, because I would go back there in a heartbeat. The place that I most love to go back to, that cozy space that Gigi was talking about, is Lisa Scottolini's Mary D'Annunzio's parents' house in Philadelphia. The kitchen of that little row house with the pot of gravy on the stove, and these ancient Italians with all the Tonys, Pigeon Tony and Tony 2 Feet and Tony from down the block. And they're all sitting drinking strong coffee until midnight and then going to bed and wondering why they can't sleep. That is hands down my favorite place to go back to.
Nice. Michael, how about you?
I'm trying to remember the name of the series. Casey Constantine.
Yeah.
Who, yeah, you know who he was, John.
Right.
He was a brilliant mystery writer who set his stories in a small town. Was it in upstate New York?
Pennsylvania, I think. And
Pennsylvania.
I can't remember the name of the hero either. Now, why not?
He was the local police captain of this small town in
Yeah.
Pennsylvania, and it was very much a working class, down on its heels town. And that was brilliant. I thought he was a brilliant writer, and I was totally immersed in the geography and the culture and the people of his novels. And I have to say, I love Los Angeles novels, from Raymond Chandler to Rachel Hoswell Hall. I'll read a LA mystery any day of the week because I always learn something new about my city.
Yeah, that's great. Gigi, who are you reading?
Well, so for thinking about setting, I think I want to mention the two authors who I grew up reading who made me want to become a mystery novelist. And that was Erin Elkins and Elizabeth Peters. And they both wrote wide-ranging settings because they had globetrotting characters. But it was a combination of getting to go new places, but also having the familiar way that you could experience them, because it was seeing the world through those characters' eyes who you loved. And so they would always see things in similar ways, but with these different places that, had eye-opening experiences. And so they both wrote fantastic adventure mysteries. And Erin Elkins he hasn't done a new Gideon Oliver in a while, but he's still writing other mysteries. But Elizabeth Peters passed away a few years ago, but she wrote many different series. The Amelia Peabody's set in she was a Victorian English woman who went to Egypt and did lots of, and was an Egyptologist there. And then the Vicky Bliss mysteries, which were my absolute favorites, which is about female historian who goes on all these globetrotting adventures. So that was Jaya was my own take on Vicky, but I love all of those settings that are so different in their in where they are and learning things, but that you also have this familiar, cozy cast of characters that you're on this adventure with.
Yeah, those are great. And it's such a wide range from of novels from a long time ago and not current novels. So that's great. How about you, John? Who are you
Well,
reading?
when I think about settings, I think about James Lee Burke and the effort he puts into his Louisiana settings. And he even does something that I think mystery authors aren't supposed to do, but he brings in the weather all the time. And I've been told, at least Delmar Leonard says, don't write about the weather. But Michael mentioned Raymond Chandler, and I think, you think about Chandler's dialogue, but also his descriptions of LA and even the weather. He's got that one wonderful sentence. I'm going to garble it, trying to reproduce it about the Santa Ana winds that cause meek housewives to feel the edge of their carving knives and look at the back of their husband's neck. That's really that's partly the weather, but partly mood as well. And the South, this man's not known for particularly settings, but I know his settings. I'm finishing Carl Hyacint's new book, Squeeze Me, which is just hilarious. And he's so into the Florida and the Everglades and the sort of trying to maintain the ecology there that it permeates his books, as does his humor, which is, and the one he's got now, Squeeze Me, it really is hilarious. So.
Good. Well, I'm glad this is being recorded because I don't have to, I would have been scribbling all of these things down had I not known I could get them later. So this next question is a little bit of a selfish question for me. I'm going to shoehorn it into settings and research. But what I really want to know is are your murders all premeditated or heat of the moment, or do you write both heat of the moment and premeditated murders? And how, if you do, how do you create convincing motives for murder? Because honestly, with very few exceptions, I can't think of a time I kill somebody. But I love to see people killed in books. So I'm actually looking at you layered up. So I'm going to start at the bottom with Gigi and then work my way back up this time.
So I am going to be your outlier answer because I don't even always kill people. I'm all about the puzzle in a mystery, and so I really love that that puzzle there, that you're on this adventure and you're following clues and figured out what happened. And so I love coming up with interesting puzzles, and I love reading them and getting caught up with the characters and really following along. And so even though I think I'm there for the puzzle, I'll get caught up with the characters and forget to follow along with clues. And, so I do that with my own work too. And so some of the people that don't like my books have told me it's because I don't pay enough attention. Like I don't have really evil bad guys, because that's not what I write about. And so that's not a spoiler to say, like, if you're looking for really evil bad guys, you probably would not really enjoy my books, because that's not what I'm going for, to really explore deep, dark motives about anything. And so I do come up with what I hope are believable ways, reasons that for people to either kill or whatever crime it is that they are committing, that I really like to make sure that it rings true, and that I don't want people throwing the book against the wall. But that's really not, but that's the angle that I approach it from, not from the angle of the killer. So.
Yeah, and your books are great. So you're not doing anything wrong. Whoever those people are, they're not nice people.
Well, no, my books just aren't for them, because I know, books,
right.
One book isn't for everyone. So, and that's why it's wonderful. We have so many different amazing books out there.
Yes, absolutely. Michael, how about you? I know it's sort of a legal thriller, so I think.
Yeah, so I was thinking, in sometimes it's premeditated. In one book, it's apparently an accident. In another book, it turns out to be a very elaborate suicide. So, it just, the manner of death depends really on what purpose it serves in the narrative. And sometimes a crime of passion is what sets things in motion, and sometimes it's something that's been long in the planning. And once I borrowed the structure of Agatha Christie's ABC Murders, which I think is a brilliant structure
Yeah.
for one of my books.
So roll in a little bit of something else with this that Michael just touched on, and then we'll let John and Katrina answer the question as well. So do you, Michael, always know the killer, and then do you know the motive first, you know the killer first, or do they sort of come to you independently?
No, I need to start backwards. So I need to know who was killed, why that person was killed before I start the book.
And do you also
Because-
know how they were killed?
Yes, because if I don't know those three things, I just get lost. So I get lost anyway, but I know I can always go, oh, right, this is what happens. This is what has to happen in the end.
Oh, right. Pull it back together.
Right.
And how about you, John? Do you start at the end and know the killer and the motive and everything?
Well, actually, I start probably at the beginning, but I was educated as an engineer, so the first mystery I ever wrote, I outlined in grim detail. I could have started at the middle and written to the end, started beginning and written to the middle, and it wouldn't have changed the book a bit. And I couldn't sell that book. But the next book was this Contrary Blues that I told you about, where I thought it was a short story about these crazy people in West Virginia who were shining on the federal government and collecting money because they were pretending to run a bus system they really weren't running. And I realized I've followed that pattern in most of my West Virginia books. I'll start with a scam, and the scammers keep getting in deeper and deeper, and eventually something cracks and somebody kills somebody to cover up the scam. And I think that's probably that's true of a fair portion of the West Virginia books. There's some crazy scam, a man who is involved in a flood, who survives a flood and finds out what his neighbor whose wife died in the flood is getting from the federal government, hides his younger son and claims his younger son was lost in the flood. There's these scams like that eventually these people get caught up and the stakes are high enough so that somebody's killed. I mean, you talk about writing, I don't much think about the difference between heat of the moment and premeditated. I write sort of this third person or limited point of view. So if there is a heat of the moment murder, it's happened off stage anyway, so.
Right. Good point.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. The difference between third and first person.
Yeah. So I don't, if the guy sees the murder, there's no puzzle anyway. So, but
Sure.
most always there's a scam that people have gotten too deeply into and it's gone all wrong. And that's the case with all my West Virginia books, I bet. Yeah.
And how about you, Katrina?
Yeah,
Premeditated. I think
that
it'd be
was interesting
different
what you
depending
just
on your
said, John.
series, right?
Sorry, Laurie, what did you say?
Oh no, go ahead.
I didn't catch what you said.
Oh, I think it's probably. You go. No, you go.
Okay, I'll go. I would have said premeditated, but listening to what you were saying there, John, I think that's probably wrong. I think it's probably better to describe them as inevitable. Even, that it was something was always going to happen, and it might well be a murder. And it's not always a scam for me, like you were saying, but I think that's probably the better way to think about it. But I'd never know who done it. I think I usually know who's going to die, usually, I very often don't know who done it. And once I changed it on the last page and surprised myself, and then, but the amazing thing was I didn't have to change anything else. It's like it was always going to happen. I just didn't know. One time, the two people were looking at a body on a beach, weighted down with a lobster creel full of rocks, and just waiting for the tide to go out enough so they could go over and turn the body over. And I thought I knew who it was that was dead, and I had these two characters walk on the squelchy sand out and turn the body over, and it wasn't the person that I thought was going to die. That was really annoying because that took a lot of rewriting.
Yeah.
So, but I don't mind not knowing who the murderer is, because that you keep writing to try and find out. And I think the clues can't be too obvious. If I don't know, then I can't make them clunkers, maybe.
Good point. So it is oddly already 12 minutes after 8. So maybe I have time for one more. I'm going to end with something that's not really researchy or setting, and it is in a way. So Arthur Conan Doyle introduced Sherlock Holmes in 1887. Before that, Edgar Allan Poe wrote The Murders in the Rue Morgue. That was published in 1841. And some say that he was influenced by E.T.A. Hoffman's 1819 work, Das Fräulein von Scuderi. That would mean that the mystery genre celebrated its 200th birthday last year. So what are some comments on the lasting appeal of the mystery novel and our genre? And I don't, any of you have something you want to just give me a little hand up? And
yeah, I'll go. Jill Peyton Walsh, who I was lucky enough to meet just once, but I'm an enormous fan of her. She sadly died last week.
yeah.
And I don't know if she's terribly well known here. But she said the one time I met her, she said it's a dream of justice, and it's only a dream because the real world is so baggy and awful. And that was a few years ago, and it's got worse since, right? But I think that half of it anyway is that dream of justice, and also that you find out who people are when they're really in a vice, when they're really up against it. That's when you find out what people are made of. I think that's what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, unlike so-called literary novels, crime fiction is literally about life and death, and justice and injustice. So I think that you get to write about bigger themes, really, or you can write about bigger themes. But I also think we can't underestimate the appeal of the puzzle. And, that's why I think, as I said earlier, I think mystery readers are often unusually intelligent and well-educated people, and they like the brain teaser aspect of crime fiction.
Yeah. Gigi, you have I saw you nodding there.
Oh yes, always the puzzle. But also it is the combination that you're swept up in the mystery, and it makes you, the rest of the world falls away, when you're reading a great book. But what I love about mystery in particular is that, at least in the mysteries that I love, that you are going to get that satisfying resolution. So, there is some sort of, there is some, even if it's not exactly a happy ending, that there is something that is neatly tied up with the resolution of the mystery. Whereas in real life, you don't get that, always. And so this is a way that you can experience whatever type of mystery you enjoy, but at the end, there should be that satisfying resolution.
Right. Yeah, I was going to say Katrina made mention that the world is sometimes not a fun place right now. And I really like being in a book where I know the bad guys are going to get it in the end. And those are the ones I love. John, how about you? What do you think the lasting appeal is?
I think the two things that struck me are, they've already mentioned, that there's the puzzle to work out. And I had heard, I guess that sometimes during the recent virtual VoucherCon, somebody was asked that same question. They said it was because order is restored in the end, which is a point that has been made a couple of times. And I think that's true, but it's certainly not true in real life. And I'm not even sure it's true in mysteries anymore. I mean, film noir, you've got nothing coming out all right in the end. But there's the appeal of the puzzle and just the working out of the bad guys' schemes are sometimes interesting. So
I would say that even in war, though, there is an emotional satisfaction when you get to the end of it. I feel, even if the end is a little messy, it's not quite resolved. I think there's still like, that's Chandler's books, you know, with through the first ones I read, they didn't always end well for Marlowe. But I felt just like sort of psychologically and emotionally fulfilled at the end of those books.
yeah,
Cathartic resolution.
Mm.
Cathartic, even if it wasn't happy. Exactly.
Right, right.
good point.
Yeah. So I have not been following the comments. Normally, people who have questions will post them in the comments in all caps. Lori King, have you been following the comments? Or if anybody does have a question right now, go ahead and drop it in there. And
I am the ghost. I am the ghost behind the screen. A gentleman by the name of Randall Brandt asked, do you think there are going to be a lot of locked trees published in 2021 since no one can go on research trips?
So I'm going to be a nerd here and jump in with a couple of definitions also, because I love locked room mysteries, because there's a lot of confusion between the terms locked room mystery and closed circle mystery. So I think there's going to be a lot of both. But just also to clarify, the locked room mystery means an impossible crime. So it doesn't always have to be, it doesn't even have to be like one particular setting, but a closed circle in a certain space with a certain amount of characters in a local setting is another something that can overlap with a locked room mystery, but not necessarily be the same thing. But yes, I
I've
think
definitely been using those two. I've been using them wrong. I've been saying locked room when I mean closed circle.
But I don't, but
I'll
you're
stop.
not alone. So many people do that, but there is so much
Yeah.
overlap, which is why there is the confusion. Like Agatha Christie, like so much of, you know, like there is so much overlap between them. But I hope, as someone who loves locked room mysteries, I hope it does inspire more people to write both of those types of books this year. I will eagerly buy them and read them.
We
Lori-
had another question of how much time have you lost going down rabbit holes while doing research? And have you ever found a treasure while doing such research? That was Carol Fairweather asked that one.
I do the research after I've written the first draft. So my drafts are unwieldy and inefficient and they make me sob, but my research is really precise because I know what I need to find out because I've already written the book. And I know actually the reason, one of the reasons that the drafts are baggy and inefficient is that I find gems in research. Because I've already written the book and then find wonderful stuff and then I'd have to pack it in and the second draft's massive and then have to squeeze it back down again for the third draft. So just really briefly, I was writing about the herring fishing industry and I found out about their wedding traditions and it stopped being a book. I mean, thank God, right? It stopped being a book about herring fishing, who cares? And started being a book about the wedding season of the herring fisher folk, which is fantastic, totally bonkers.
I'm not sure it's a rabbit hole, but I found myself in a dark mine at one point, and I tend to do research as I go along, but I have monthly deadlines for my writing group. So I had my hero trapped in a mine, and I wrote this harrowing couple of scenes where the black walls are closing in on him, and then I thought, well, you know, I haven't been in a mine in 50 years, and the mines that I was in then were cragged, had cragged walls, and you went down in a rickety, it's calling it elevator is not quite right, but I don't remember exactly what they.
Each. Yeah.
At any rate, I knew I had to go into a mine currently, and when I did, I finally got back to West Virginia after I'd written the scenes, and I went into a mine, and I found that the walls were as straight as the walls in my room. They were not black. They were about the color of my my beige sweater. And so suddenly I, having beige walls collapse on somebody didn't have the same effect. So I had a big rewriting job to do because the current mines were all carved out by big machines, and they sprayed limestone dust on them to keep down the fire hazard. So that would cause the beige walls, and I managed to turn out all the lights when I needed it to be dark, and use much of the same work. Anyhow, that's one instance where research got me into trouble, I guess.
Yeah.
Hmm.
That had we had more time, one of the questions that I was going to ask you was, has your research ever made you go back and really change your book? So Bill, you actually, or John, you actually answered that question for me.
Yeah.
Lori, do you?
The next question?
Yeah, please.
Okay. There's a lovely woman from Bangalore in India named Harini Nagendra, and she is a huge fan of Katrina and Gigi. And so she will stay on and say hello to you afterwards. But she wants to know about the kind of people, when you're writing a setting, it's often matched to the kind of people who live there. So that, for example, Hugh Gilver is who he is because of where he was born. And how do you match character to location in a way that makes it real? And have you thought of different characters who may also fit your setting, or is the match automatic for you? So the match between the character and the setting, I think, is what we're looking at here.
Well, I gave
What an
the-
interesting question. Go ahead.
Oh, well, no, I said I gave the example when I was talking about the nurse that my mother had, that I've worked into my mysteries as Owen Allison's mother, who was a backwoods character. She was a wonderful nurse, but her grammar was horrible because she was educated in West Virginia. And I find part of my research in going back to West Virginia is to catch up with the people. There are still great regional differences in people and the way they talk and the way they think. And so I even go so far as when I'm trying to name characters, I go to the local obituaries from my hometown and pick character names. So there are certain characters that just don't fit in West Virginia. And there are certain character names that don't fit. And
That's why I could never do a character name competition until I had a book set in California, because I've got these books set in the 1930s in Scotland, and like Kylie and Keanu could win the character name competition. It could never work. But I can do it now because I can have anyone. You can have any name at all in California.
Well,
For me, I think that. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go on. I was just going to say, so I think that the demographics of your setting, in a sense, dictate what kind of characters you introduce, as secondary characters, for example, because you're trying to create a fictional world. And so you really want your characters to be representative of the place you're writing about. In a place like Los Angeles, it's a polyglot city where basically, it's an international city. And so if you want to demonstrate that, then you have Armenian characters, and you have the Guatemalan character, and you have the Laotians, and that all serves to help give texture to that fictional world that you're writing about. So I think the demographics of the place you're writing about, it's important to know what those demographics are and to use them selectively, to help create that fictional world.
Yeah, it certainly makes their dining out more interesting too. They get to go out to more fun restaurants when they live someplace like Los Angeles. Or so, Katrina, I'm sorry.
I use the characters certainly in Dandy Gilver as a way to avoid info dump, as a way to avoid just big clods of description, by giving the people who are in charge of that bit of the setting a kind of investment in it, so that the setting's got some psychological heft. So for instance, her household staff, her butler is you know, a stuffed shirt. He's a snob, and he's got a stick up his back. So the running of the household is seen through him and through his desire to keep everything rigid. Her cook adores her and can't do enough for her. So that lets me talk about the food without it being just a description of food. And her maid, her lady's maid, is despairs of how dowdy Dandy Gilver is. So there's a kind of bit of psychological heft in bits of the setting that would otherwise just be describing clothes, food, and rooms, which is a bit
Yeah.
dull. Mm.
It sets up a nice comparison between who they are and who we would normally assume Dandy Gilver's, you know, she would be of one stature, and then the people that work for her would be of another. But it's one of the things I love about Dandy Gilver's, they're always telling her something. She's always like, well, I don't know why.
No, she's a complete pushover. I mean, even the dog is in charge, which is, you know, about normal. The pets are, and the dog's on the chair and she's kind of on the floor. So,
Right.
yeah.
Well, it's so, Lori, were there any other questions, Lori Kay?
I think that Jim Ziskin was interested in talking to John about Hitchcock and the Statue of Liberty, but I think that we can talk about that after because it's not really about mysteries and research. So no.
Okay, well, I think it's 8:28. So how would you panelists feel about a few minutes if we have people who want to come in and say hi to you, have them turn on their cameras and their microphones and pop in here and say hello? And Jim Ziskin, I can put you in touch with John Bilheimer if you want to have that conversation.
So are we finishing? Do we want to close it out? So
I think, well, it's 8:30, so I think we should probably move into the cocktail hour since while in the last few minutes, my houseboy has brought me a glass of wine.
houseboy, I
Married
just
him, but
Yeah.
So
I
I
got
want to thank the panelists. I want to thank Lori for running this fabulous panel.
Thank
I
you,
want to thank
Lori.
all of the
Thank you both,
participants who
Loris.
hung out here. This will also be staying over on Facebook. If anyone of your friends missed it, you can send them the link. So I'm going to shut things down, but please, everyone open up your cameras and have a chat.
Thank you, Laurie.
yeah. So Harini, come on here. So Harini is who they were talking about. She's not just from Bangalore. You're actually in Bangalore right now, right?
Right,
Oh.
I have, yes.
What time is it?
9
It's
a.m.
8:59, 9 a.m. Yeah. So it works out well.
I've never understood the half-hour difference. That's always thrown me that it's not, that it's on the half hour.
Well, there's a 15-minute difference with Nepal, which I realized when I was doing field work there, which is even weirder because it's like, how do you keep the 15 minutes on?
I've always said it's because India does not want to be on the same time zone as Pakistan.
It's absolutely what it is. Yes.
And Harini, I worked in Bangalore for several years. So nice to see you here.
Thank you. No, it's such a pleasure. I love this. This was really, I've been struggling with some things, I think, as I sort of wrote in the chat box. So I'm completely different by profession. I'm an ecologist, and Gigi knows me because I got in touch with her with a pitch wars thing. So she helped me get started on a novel I'd been sitting on for 10 years. But which is done now, but there's aspects of writing that I've been struggling with. So I think this panel was really, really helpful for me, and I just wanted to say hi. And a big thank you to Catriona, because you don't know it, but your books are helping me get through the lockdown. I discovered your book 6 months ago, and I had no idea, and it's just I've been going at them one after the other. So it's lovely.
Lovely to hear. Yeah, that's lovely to hear. Isn't it strange because some people are not reading at all? Like I've heard of people say, I can't read, I can't concentrate to read. And I've just been devouring books. I think I read 12 books last month.
Yeah, I'm reading twice as much as usual.
Yeah. But I don't know if other people are having trouble reading, but that's lovely to hear. Thank you.
Rereading a lot of old stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And it's the only thing that helps you get through some days, I think.
I'm starting and stopping a lot of things more. Like I have to find the right thing because my mood, you know, like I'll start 3 things before finding what's the right thing that I can stick with. Yeah.
Well, I can thoroughly recommend Rules for Being Dead if anybody's in the market for just complete immersion. I read it in 2
I was
days.
Googling it as you spoke. Yeah.
It's just tremendous.
I'm
I mean,
writing
it
that
depends
down.
it depends what you like, but I just thought it was fantastic.
You know, on a different note, Catriona, because I started reading the Scott series and I moved to the US. I was in California briefly in 97 and 98 because my husband was finishing up his postdoc there.